As parenting coaches, one of the most important jobs that we have is to maintain relational safety between ourselves and our client. And this is for some reasons that are very obvious, right? Sometimes things like trauma come up, challenging situations, but there's a more important reason that applies to all human beings. So whenever we are talking to a person and we come up against shame or guilt or regret, the very natural human inclination to those very human feelings is to throw up a defense mechanism. And defense mechanisms are highly effective. They are basically walls that we throw up with our language, with what we're willing to share, with our willingness to have insight and see the role that we're playing in our family as a way of protecting those very tender places within us. The problem with defense mechanisms is they go both ways. So they blind the truth between two people to each other. And so part of our work as coaches is to always be aware of where there might be booby traps for defense mechanisms to come up. And so in this coaching session, you're going to hear the very masterful coach, Rebecca Lyddon, work with our JAI coaching student, Amanda, on what feels like a very normal parental complaint. My kid's always hanging on me and then I act terribly and I feel terrible. But I want you to really listen for the coaching skills that Rebecca brings to bear in this conversation. And then we will unpack them as always after you listen to this session. Sometimes I think you can hear a coach like Rebecca and think, I could never do that. And so I just want to reassure you that if you're thinking about becoming a parent coach or you're one of our students in our program, you've got so much structure underneath you. What you're about to hear in this session is the result of years in the saddle, right? 10,000 hours, I think, is the thing to become an expert. And that can only happen when you start at the beginning. Enjoy today's session.
I have been in almost exactly a year. We've been kind of in a very stressful situation with a new baby. I found some stuff that wasn't quite normal in his 20-week anatomy scan. And then he came with some extra things that were kind of hidden that weren't seen on the anatomy scan. And so it was a lot of stress for it. We found out in March last year. So it's been almost exactly a year. And I have been struggling with a lot of anger recently and rage towards my 7-year-old. He's my oldest. And I have just not liked how I have felt towards him.
Okay. So you're giving me a little bit of environmental information that your entire family's been in some medical stress, and then also the integration of a new baby. And how old is your baby?
7 months.
7 months. Okay. And then, so you have a 7-year-old, and then I believe you have a 2-year-old. Or
that's correct.
2. Yeah, 2. And how old is your 2-year-old? Is he newly 2 or almost 3?
No, he'll be 3 in July.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So 7, almost 3, and newborn with medical needs is what I'm hearing. Okay. And when you say you're struggling with your responses or your reactivity with your son, and you're not feeling good about how you're handling yourself with him lately.
That's correct.
Yeah. Could you define, if you're willing to get detailed with me, and I can handle it? I've probably done almost verbatim what you're about to tell me. So I invite you to be as specific as you can.
Okay. So my 7-year-old is very touchy, wants to be in your space. He likes closeness. He likes being in control of a situation, which, who doesn't? But so he will be playing with my 2-year-old. And I just feel like I'm constantly saying things like, it looks like he doesn't like that. You need to restrict his body, and I will say things like that over and over and over all day. Or like, why is he screaming? Like, I don't know. Just
Okay.
like I'm hearing that he doesn't like what's going on. And
Yeah.
after like the, 10th, 15th time, I feel like I'm
Mm.
saying that, I just like snap and I'm just like, why? Like, just go to another. I just don't want you around me. I don't want you around him. Like, just get out. I cannot handle why do you have to be in his business? Like, what are
Mhm.
you doing? And I
Mhm.
just lose it on him. And then I feel terrible after the
Mhm.
fact. Because I'm like, I know
Yeah.
he's just a 7-year-old boy that's, like, got a lot of pent-up energy and has not been getting the connection that he needs over the last year, and I'm
Mm.
like, I feel sorry for him, but then I'm
Mm.
like, I feel sorry for myself. So it's just this
Mm.
cycle of just the I start out really good the first several times, I feel like, of,
Okay.
like, addressing it, and then I just can't anymore, and I
Okay.
just lose it.
Okay. Totally feel you. Okay. So a few things are clarifying for me as far as the direction that we can take today. And one is I'd like to reflect back the, we could call it temperament or inclinations of your son, what you notice about him, some chronic needs that he's seeking to be met in particular ways. That's something I'm curious about. Two is I'm curious about the way that you're communicating and the efficacy of your intervention. So, like, what is it you're literally saying and doing? And you modeled a little bit to me what that
Mhm.
is. And I see room, if what it is that you shared with me is typically how you communicate and navigate it, I see room for workshopping, just in a very tactile way of
Perfect.
reframing, rewording. Yeah.
Yes.
And the third is more of the punch in the gut part where you're in your regret and your remorse and your, that collapse, that deflation that happens in our system when we are trying so hard to insert our parenting and our guidance calmly, gently, peacefully. And then we're like, we can't do it anymore. And we erupt and we explode and we say things that we can't take back.
Yeah.
And that creates the rupture that we're going to have to process and repair. And the tricky thing here, Amanda, is that, and I'm sure you are aware of this. Well, I'm assuming, let me know if this is true. When we react and we react from a place of total exhaustion and burnout and say things we can't take back and that hurt our children to hear, I find in myself and with my clients that, like you're saying, the cycle is then that exacerbates your son's proximity seeking, inability to follow through on someone's feedback about their boundaries. Yeah. So
Definitely,
you
definitely.
naming that it's a cycle. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll zoom out for just a moment because when I'm confronting a cycle in my parenting, I can feel really overwhelmed and a little panicky. Like, how are we going to shift this? How is this ever going to change? And I just want to do a little bit of a system check for you. You came here hungry for this conversation,
Yes.
but I'm curious what the loudest voice in the room as far as how you're feeling about confronting this cycle.
I think just desperate for help or desperate for change or like a
Yeah.
strategy because I'm like, what can I do right now that will
Mm.
help alleviate some of this?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. If you were to scale your dedication to show up and really begin to shift this pattern on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 is like, I am like uber duper ready to rock and roll. One is like, yeah, can you do it for me?
Ratings are very tricky for me.
Oh, are they? We could try a different framework if the
I'm
1 to 10 thing. My brain also doesn't super duper love that. Is there a
I'm like,
better way for
oh,
you?
I feel like there's not I have to be right. you know?
Oh, I
So
remember
it's
this
like,
about how
yeah.
your brain navigates. Yeah, I
Yeah, it's like,
appreciate that.
I'm like, I don't know what number it is because which number is right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's bring some playful energy in here. Like
Okay.
the part of you that's like, well, what's the right answer, Amanda? We have to have the right answer, Amanda.
Yes.
And I'm just gonna like some playfulness into this moment.
Okay.
Amanda, just can you share with me, like, are you ready to really begin working with this cycle and
Yes.
begin moving
I
this pattern?
yes, I definitely want change.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I want to start our discovery from this place because this desire and this longing is going to keep us afloat so we don't fall into despair or that overwhelmed panicky place that I mentioned. So, how I interpreted what you shared about your son is that he's sensory seeking, which does that oversimplify him or does that
I
connect to what you
yeah, I
noticed?
would say he's sensory seeking. I would agree with that statement.
Okay. Yeah. So is he kind of like the kid who jumps off the couch onto a pile of pillows 500 to 1,000 times in a row?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. Great. And so let's just stop there. Is he getting enough high impact, rough
No.
housing? No. Okay.
No, and he used to so my husband used to do, like, they called it daddy rough time or
Okay.
rough-ins or whatever,
Rough.
and he used to do that with my husband, and that was kinda his thing every day when my husband came home from work, and
Okay.
after having the second, it kind of shifted, and
Uh-huh.
then over this last year, it has been, like, I can probably count on one hand the amount of times in the
Mm,
last year that they've actually, like, had that dedicated time, so it has
mm.
been drastic.
Okay. Yeah. And I can only imagine based off of what you've told me at the beginning of our session as far as circumstances, what could be getting in the way of that being a priority for your oldest son.
Mhm.
But if you'd like to share a little more, what is it that's keeping your husband from initiating that kind of connection with him?
I think partially the exhaustion of our
Absolutely.
circumstances. I think it's just his work and then having a medical needs baby, and, like, I exclusively breastfed my older 2, and with
Okay.
this one, we've had to do bottle feeding, and
Okay.
he was on thickened liquids, so it's just, like, everything has felt new, overwhelming, scary, and so I think it's just been overwhelm, and then just exhaustion,
Oh yeah, I didn't even know
emotionally
if
and
I needed
physically.
to ask you that question because I already knew the answer is like, I'm exhausted and
Yeah,
overwhelmed. That's why,
yeah.
which makes complete sense. And what we've learned together in coaching is that sparking initiation energy in a client is the most beneficial when it feels like they can take a step toward it with a yes in their body. And I wonder if your husband's not here, so I don't get to have that conversation, but there's not a right answer here, by the way, Amanda, to that part of you that's like, we have to have the right answer to Rebecca's questions.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, is there any willingness in your system to at least bring more conscientiousness to that unmet need for your son?
I think so. And you probably remember this about me too. Playfulness in almost any way is hard for me
Hmm.
too.
Hmm.
So like the rough play and stuff like that was never really my thing. Like I'm like, I would love reading with you or like taking a walk
Yeah,
with you or like
totally.
something.
Okay, I'm curious, Amanda, if there is willingness in you, not necessarily to act on the roughhousing, not to even do it, but just to move forward from our session today with more awareness that that's something that you could talk to Ben about, your husband. You could even talk with your son about, like, that hasn't been happening. How's it? Do you miss that? Is
Mm,
there a willingness there?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm not looking for like, once he has roughhousing play again, everything will be fine.
sure.
But we're taking these little just like investigatory steps
Yeah.
for high impact, high input rough play so he can get that, like that tactile yum yum in his body that he's showing you he so desperately is needing. Maybe desperately is too dramatic of a word.
I would think it seems desperate sometimes with the way that he plays.
It does make me curious because let's play around with the word desperate. And I don't mean to over dramatize this, but why I chose that word is when a child has a physiological need in order for their, and I know that you know this, but we're just remembering with each other.
Yeah.
That is, it's primitive, it's prime. It's going to go, like I mentioned earlier, what's the loudest voice in the room? That's going to be the loudest voice in the room. And so when you're giving him verbal direction, like, I don't know what you say, but I know things that I say are like, hey, bud, it looks like brother doesn't like that. Hey, bud, do you see brother? He's wanting you to scoot back. We're giving kids the top down direction to their upstairs brain, and they're not able to succeed in it because the loudest voice in the room is their primal need for input and regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a reminder for you, but what is it like to remember?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I feel stuck though.
Okay.
Like what to do. So would it be like redirecting him towards, obviously making the time and talking with Ben, but like in those instances,
in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, hey, come jump on your trampoline or something like, I don't know, like.
I'm going to go with your gut instinct there. And your gut instinct here came up with an idea to redirect and invite him into an activity that would meet the root of the behavior, which the behavior is not picking up on someone else's social cue. It's not being able to pay attention to what is really obvious in the environment. And it's not able to follow through on a direction successfully or follow through on a limit successfully. So just do a gut check here, and the part of you who needs to be right in order to feel safe, we're going to bring some playfulness and experimentation into the moment. So go with your own self-direction here of redirecting him to an activity that would meet the root need. Does that feel right for you?
Yeah, I think giving him, instead of just pointing out what's wrong. What's wrong here, kind of thing. Don't you see? This is not working. He obviously doesn't see that it's not working. So I think sending him to do something, or not even sending, but maybe directing him and being with him would probably be the best case scenario if possible. But having him do something like that, like jumping on the trampoline or going outside and swinging, or even hitting. Sometimes I just tell him to go take a stick and hit the tree.
Exactly, honey. Go beat the tree with a stick.
Yeah.
I tell my 6-year-old, go get the chainsaw and just cut some trees down, honey, in the field.
He has asked, to be fair, he has asked for like a handsaw and different things. Like,
oh yeah.
He just craves it so bad.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Beautiful. So let's hold that here. And what's calling me now is so much empathy and warmth for your experience here in how tired you must be and how low resourced you may be emotionally and psychologically for a technique like redirection. And all right, bud, it looks like your body's needing this. Let's grab some space and let's go out with a stick. That's going to take effort, energy, commitment, follow through on your end. And I have like tears in my face because I know how hard it can be to take that first step when you're so tired. Mm-hmm. Can you share with me? Let's do this like an empathy check. How you're feeling, or what is that like for you in those moments that are requiring you to step up your game a little bit?
Yeah, tiring. Whenever I've talked with one of my close friends, it's just, I feel so worn thin.
Yeah.
You know, I just feel so incapable of the most basic things sometimes.
Sure.
So, but I also have like a deep craving, and especially just over the last month, I've really
Okay.
noticed a shift with like, because I homeschool him as well, and so
Okay.
like his school has been like, here, let's get on. We do like Khan Academy Kids and different
Okay.
like here, do these because I don't have the energy to like,
Sure.
engage with a lot of intense lessons or anything like that right now. So, but I've had over the last month, I have noticed like, ooh, I want to do this kind of activity or I want to
Okay.
do so I notice a shift in myself where I feel a little more capable currently
Okay.
than I have in the last year.
Yeah, so following your system's cues, that there's some vitality sparking. It may not be anywhere where it could be when you keep developing and keep growing, but at least there's a spark.
Yeah.
So I want to check in here that if we were to, I'm not going to do a 1 to 10, although I'm like 1 to 10, but no. Uh, Yeah, I think it's what is it like for you right now to imagine stepping in with a redirection? Does that feel effortful and like it's going to take a lot of energy? Or can you access any like, oh, this could be easy for me to just shift a little bit?
I think it's incredibly situational. So I
Yeah.
think it just it depends on where I'm at in that given day. So like if I've had a really hard time with the baby not because he sleeps pretty well overnight, which I'm so thankful for, but he does not sleep a lot during the
In the
day. So
day.
like
Yeah.
it just is tricky because if he's, I'm like pumping and then
Okay.
feeding and then try. So it just depends. Because I feel like some days I've really felt capable, and some days I'm just like, "Oh, please, just I just wanna lay down and go to sleep."
Yeah, absolutely. So when I asked that question, it sparked a reality check in a way within you of yes, potentially you could see that this could be an easy shift in the right quote unquote circumstances, as in
Yeah.
like you're not distracted, you're not feeding the baby at that time. Like, things kind of need to align for you to implement this new strategy in a way that feels like it could really work and flow.
Yes.
Makes perfect sense to me. And I think that's how we're going to have to roll with this in the beginning. So when the doorways aren't open in the moment, it's just not opening. It's just too chaotic for you to get in there with this really positive, directive,
Mhm.
redirective strategy. We go for those windows. For me, it's like, oh, this is a good time for me to do that thing that my parent coach reminded me I could do instead of, don't you see it's not working? Don't you see he doesn't like this? Why can't you take a step back? Why aren't you listening to him?
Mhm.
Are you willing to focus on those little open windows to begin practicing this?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want it. I want
Yeah. I
more. I
see.
mean,
You
I like
still want.
yes,
Yeah.
I am like longing for more connection and like not just less friction with him. I just he I miss him, you know?
Yeah, there's about 100 doorways opening up for me here of the heart and the love that we have for our children.
Yeah.
And this is one thread in your story right now. And what we've identified so far is more of the root behind his behavior of not following your directions. And I'm repeating myself 10 to 15 times, and we're confronting together. Stop repeating yourself 10 to 15 times. So there's a rule of thumb of 2 and done, which is a
Okay.
bit of a tight expectation for a parent. We don't have to start with 2 and done. Maybe we could start with 5 and done, meaning, well, how I'd like to teach it is 2 and done. So I get 2 reminders, high quality. And if my child is still not succeeding in them, I understand that I need to shift my technique. It's no longer fair for me to be using verbal directives.
Mm, yeah. Yep. It makes perfect sense. It just is so dang hard. But yes,
Well,
yeah, no, I mean, it makes perfect sense why I'm wearing myself out.
yeah.
He's not getting what he needs, and I
Yeah.
need to help him try to get his needs met.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing here that I get really curious about, and I'll model myself and then I'll pass you the baton to see if you
Okay.
relate. When I'm craving power, I don't want to do two and done. I, in a strange way, like believe that I deserve obedience right now. And I deserve support right now. And I'm not going to work any harder. I'm just going to keep repeating. And I find I'm just giving my autonomy away. I'm giving my sovereignty away. I am burying myself as the victim of the situation. And I use that word with respect because I know that that's very real for people, but I try to challenge my belief system when I'm perceiving I'm the victim of my child's behavior because personally I do not believe that I am. And that belief system is created a long time ago. We're not going to get there today, but we'll have to have another session together. But I'm wondering if you resonate with that. Like, I don't want to do two and done. I'm going to cling to this repeat, 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 repeat.
Sometimes, yes.
Mhm.
Sometimes I definitely feel it's like and I, hear my parents kind of
Okay.
talking about the,
Okay.
yeah, you're being disrespectful and you need to do as
Okay.
I say because, that kind of mindset of,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. I just like to double check this. And I hear you say sometimes, and I believe you.
Mhm.
My job is to help dissolve any potential barriers that we're not even really conscious of. So the next time the window of opportunity opens for you to implement this technique of positive redirect, hey, bud, you don't even have to say, do you notice that he's saying stop? Got to listen to brother's words. We have to respect his space. Don't even have to do that. It's just, buddy, come on, get those monkey hands out here and let's go get you a tree to swing it or whatever your language is going to be. But I get really curious about anything that could potentially block you. And I love that you're naming it, that if there is a belief that he should listen to me,
Mhm.
I shouldn't have to change my technique. He is being disrespectful. It's not me disrespecting him and his needs. No, it's him being disrespectful. And I'm hearing you say that that is a voice in your inner counsel. And so, yeah, I imagine you've been deconditioning from that belief system for
Yeah.
time and time and time. But if we could take another layer off of that, would you be willing to do that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And no magical wand here. It really is just your consciousness and your willingness that you're
Mhm.
going to have that up here rather than back here in those
Yeah.
moments.
This is so good for me.
Tell me what's good about it if
I
you
just
want.
the reminder, I mean, like,
Okay.
because these are things I know, and these are
Yeah.
things that I have grown to believe, and it's just I kind of when I stop feeding myself these kind of narratives, you
Mhm.
just default. So
Mhm.
I have been on default, and I don't like my default. So
Yeah.
it's just good for me to hear that I have these beliefs that I've been deconditioning, but I also have the opposite, like I have the belief that is worthy of respect and that
Beautiful.
he has needs
Mm.
and as his parent, it is my responsibility, and this is my belief that I am supposed to help him get his needs met. So
Mm, mm.
it's just,
Mhm.
just part of my role. So
Mhm. Yes, and I'm wondering when you say out loud and you have a belief that it's my responsibility to get his needs met, there's no right answer. I mean, but I'm wondering what that feels like, and I'll make it easy for you. I'll make it dichotomous here. Does that feel
okay.
heavy or does that feel light?
So bear with me. I think
Yeah.
it feels heavy, but also empowering. I don't know if empowering's the right word, but like invigorating or like but also very
energizing.
energizing is a good one. Yeah.
Okay. So I love that we're naming this paradox where the weight of the responsibility, especially in this nuclear family system that we have, where we're not having our values mirrored back to us by other mothers parenting their children in a way that affirms what we're doing. You're alone in this work. And we can get disconnected from the path. And that's when the responsibility feels more burdensome. And we lose the light, we lose the spark, the vitality, the invigoration, the inspiration, the excitement, I get to be the one, and I am emotional. Like, I get to be the one who sees my son struggling and is able to see what is really happening here. And what's really happening here is he just needs me to remind him to go get a stick and hit a tree.
Yep.
He just needs mommy to remind him to go jump on the trampoline.
Yeah.
And that is where the honor of motherhood comes in. I get to be the one who sees him and redirects him and reminds.
Yes. And there's a lot of the weightiness feels real on a lot of those levels, because when you were talking about being kind of alone, people just don't get him, you know? And that is so hard. And I don't want to be one of those people, you know, like I do know what he needs. And and so I'm like, the fact that I have not been helping him just weighed so heavy.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing that we're rediscovering and reminding each other here today is that you can always get back on the mat. Life is going to life. And I'm not sure any mother goes through raising a child without seasons of disconnect.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my husband today, like, oh my goodness, the amount of neglect for our daughter's needs that happened when our son was born for years that are just, and we're reconnecting with her in ways that we haven't done for 4 years.
I feel that.
You can always get back on the mat, and she's there. She's like ready to receive it. And yeah, I think it's really also stoking the flame of it's not this all or nothing. I failed him. It's over. It's like, get back in there. And it's going to happen. And you're sharing with me the hunger, the longing, the invigoration. And I'm wondering if you're willing to believe, like in your heart, in your body, and in your head together, that you can reconnect with your son.
That feels so hard because I do struggle with the all or nothing and the it's too late and I don't want to believe that, but it's like there. It's like this voice in my head of look what you've done. Like you wasted a year of his life. Just neglect was the perfect word when you described your relationship with your daughter, that you felt like you were being neglectful. I just feel that so strongly.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, that voice in your head. Would you be okay with me sharing what's coming up for me as you're talking?
Absolutely.
Let me know if this is what it is that voice is feeling or thinking. I'm in relationship with a similar voice, and I describe that part of me as deep shame, who has internalized a paradigm of punishment. And so when I do something bad, wrong, I deserve to suffer. I deserve to be punished. I deserve to learn my lesson. And the punishment paradigm is lessons I learned typically alongside the withdrawal of affection, connection, and approval. So in a strange way, when we are remorseful and regretful and ashamed for our lack of showing up for our children, our neglect, we punish ourselves by resisting the possibility that we can reconnect with our children at any time. We punish ourselves keeping ourselves disconnected from our child, which the snake eats its own tail here. Yeah. And then we just perpetuate neglect.
Yeah, I resonate with that for sure. And I don't want to feel that. I don't want to allow those to eat me up. I've been so looking forward to this conversation with you, Rebecca. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. So much love to your family.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've gone through something that can't imagine anyone who hasn't been in your shoes could really ever understand.
Yeah.
So there's more that we get to explore in this. And I'd love to respect your system. And I feel like this could be a good place for you to step away and to digest. And just one last point on that voice in you and that habit in you to self-punish and to shame yourself for neglecting your son by keeping you away from reconnecting to your son.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that really confusing, disorganized way of coping.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind me labeling it in that way, that's how I label mine.
Yeah,
okay.
Makes sense.
I'm hearing you say, like, I don't want that. And for right now, it's here. And so it's just accepting that this is an aspect of how you experience and process relationships, emotions, the world right now. And remember where we started is like, do you want this? And you said yes. And so our work together is allowing that voice and that conditioning to be what it is right now while we are stoking the flame of your hunger and your longing and your honor. I get to. And eventually that will be a louder voice in the room.
Before we get into the session, I want to back up a little bit. I know you have a coaching relationship with Amanda, and I want to spend a little time on honoring a family that's in crisis, right? That when there is, a new baby with health challenges and how that impacts the family system. I was actually just reading some really interesting research on disenfranchised grief. And I thought, I want to talk to Rebecca about this because in our culture, there's not often space met for grief that isn't mourning black and white things. And it just struck me right at the beginning of Amanda's conversation, right? I know you guys got much more tactical and we'll get into that, but my heart for a mother and a family and siblings navigating this new world, which is so different from what I imagined they imagined, and how that disenfranchised grief can play out in the family system. I'm just curious to kind of hear your words on that.
I imagine for Amanda and mothers who experience something similar in their family system, there is not a lot of space or permission or even the safety to break down because you have to be able to function and show up, just keep your child healthy and alive in a high needs medical parenting situation, and then to show up for you other children. And that's going to compound the stress and the overwhelm and the exhaustion that a mother or a parent is facing on a day-to-day basis with their children. And I imagine in this session that this is the space where this mother gets to be held, potentially for the first time. If she had not come in with a very clear intention and she had just been a client of mine, I may have prioritized more, providing space for her to get as detailed as she possibly can about what is heavy on her heart and to hold that emotional co-regulatory space. It went in a different direction. And yes, as the facilitator, that's in my consciousness that, gosh, this is just a really, really, really tough spot for a family. And so I'm going to be extra generous. I'm going to be extra gracious in my support. And then I focused very specifically on that inner strength and that perseverance and that resiliency, because that's what's going to be guiding her through this tough time until she's able to collapse and have her grief fully.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because I noticed you really having her state her readiness, multiple times in the session. And I've watched you coach a lot. That's not, it felt different to me. And I'm curious about why you did that. And now that makes sense.
Okay. Mm-hmm. It was on purpose.
Yeah. Can you say more about that?
Mm-hmm. For a mother or a father or a parent living in chronic heaviness, I think the both ands here of providing space for the grief, it's a bit of a re-articulation of what I've already mentioned, providing space for the grief and for what must be felt to be felt. So it's not compounding and creating illness and creating a backlog in the system that's making life even harder. I want to pair that with this almost like a warrior spirit and really showing up and invigorating this mother's will. Because as a mother of a high needs medical child myself, I know what it's like to be in the trenches where it's just every day, every night for years. And you have to have the fire burning in order to get through. And I just was so enamored by witnessing the strength of this mother, and my privilege and honor is to hold up the mirror of like, you are so strong and so capable. I'm going to ask questions that give you opportunity after opportunity to stand in that.
I love it. I think this was a really beautiful example of showing how parent coaches can hear what might be perceived as, not being a good mom or not being a good parent, and how those circumstances look different when we understand the holistic picture. We've all had those moments as a parent of like, I just don't want you around me. I just don't like you. I don't like myself when I'm around you. And what I love about this show is I hope that we're normalizing how common that is, and how when we only take that microcosm of our parenting and judge everything about it through that, we're not giving ourselves the same grace or compassion that we would give any other person in a similar circumstance. I'm curious, as a parenting coach, like, how does it feel for you? Obviously you're a ginormous advocate for children. You talk about very complex topics like deconditioning, parenting, and I want to talk about the punishment paradigm, right? Like, there's so much juicy stuff, but I'm just curious, in your role as a parent coach, when parents are so trusting and brave to say out loud what we don't have permission to say out loud, what does that feel like?
It feels like this gift back to the world that mothers and fathers are no longer having to live in secrecy of what it's like to parent in this day and age. and the isolation and the dehumanization that we have internalized. Big word. What does that mean? It is believing that we're the only ones experiencing this. And you said the word normalize. I say humanized, so human. Learning to be a human, showing our children what being a human is. And the feeling for me is, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful feeling.
I want to unpack this cycle, maybe a little bit at the brain level, because we've all experienced it, right? The more we push back against an unwanted or undesired behavior, the more that another person, I think whether they're a child or a full-grown adult, has a need for that. And we create this vicious escalating cycle. Yeah. And I wondered if you could speak to the mechanism of that.
Yeah. A healthy nervous system will resist. It will flee. It will freeze, or it will collapse in the face of force. That is biology. That's just neurology. That's how we're wired. And understanding that, we can look at this from a psychological lens, like the developing will, and the social emotional lens of a child as they're gaining autonomy and claiming their own identity aside from us, and them learning how to stand in their no, I will not, is such a crucial phase of development. We must protect that phase so children can become autonomous, can become strong. We actually want to raise strong-willed children. That's our goal, actually. Will is your ability to commit, to follow through, to show up, to stand in your clarity, to be courageous, to be brave, to have integrity, all of these qualities that many of us want and we're clamoring around on how to instill into our children. And just neurobiologically, how the brain and body are wired to respond to force. Force equals threat. We're going to respond with a threat response. Subconsciously, we're going to try to protect ourselves against the big person who's overpowering us and using manipulation psychologically or emotionally, or is using fear to control our body. And many of us reward children who go into the fun response in the name of force, which is, okay, mommy, okay, daddy, I'm a good girl, I'm a good boy. And we know with all of the research that creates people with a dissociated sense of self, meaning they don't know who they are. They look in the mirror and they have no idea. What do I want? I don't know. What do you want me to want? What do I need? No idea.
Who do you want me to be?
Yeah. And then they become parents, and then they don't know how to take care of themselves. Mm. And that's where burnout and maternal illness, mental health really festers and becomes a really scary place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always love your passion, and I obviously am in awe of your knowledge. I think I value it because I get it. It's hard to, when this has been, when the context of parenting for all these generations has been break the will, break the spirit, quiet the child. Of course, you're going to yell at them if they're hitting baby brother. How will they learn not to? What do you mean? You're going to go let them jump on the trampoline? Isn't that rewarding the behavior? Right? Like all of these things that we hear were never, I don't think, looked at through the long-term cost of those strategies. And I thought what you said about having that pattern within yourself, that punishment, I forget what you called it, a punishment paradigm or...
Yeah, internalized power over.
Yes. That as an adult, then we're literally living through a worldview where whenever we do something wrong or make a mistake, we deserve it. Mm. And how correlated that is to staying in toxic relationships, staying in toxic work environments, keeping friends around us who who treat us terribly. But hey, we listened when our parents told us to clean their room. Like, it just like,
very confusing. And I have a lot of compassion for those of us who still struggle to be able to access a different perspective other than fear. I just received a message from a student who is, the follower of the leader of hundreds of thousands of parents on the internet. And this person's still grappling. Aren't I reinforcing bad behavior? So deep. And it's such incredible work to just take the vines, alienating them away. So it's such a risk. And this is what I love about being a coach, is that I hold complete trust and belief that what's on the other side of this person taking a risk to relinquish the need to control every moment of their child from a place of fear and non-belief that their child's capable of learning and growing and actualizing without being shamed and humiliated and punished and deprived. I'll hold that for my client until they're able to hold that for themselves. And it's such an honor.
I think another place where we're not valuing humanity, as you say, is by being honest about how powerful these primal needs are. And we think that children should be able to override them with logic or our lecturing or our words, when if we're really honest about it, we can't either.
Right.
If it was that
yelling and snapping, that's why we hate our reactivity. We wish we were different. How could I have said that? How could I have done that? You haven't been able to practice containing your impulses. You've been lectured and compressed and disciplined into disconnecting from your impulses. And we are actually wanting children to learn how to experience the impulse, learn what it is that will satisfy those impulses so they can mature. Our goal is to not keep children in perpetual immaturity. We're not raising children who are becoming children for the rest of their lives. No, this is so intelligent in the name of maturity. As we learn more and more physiologically how a healthy nervous system develops, and thus the impulse control center of our brain develops, I may have the impulse to bite back or to snap back or to yell. However, I can feel that impulse rising in my system. I can make a conscious choice because I know what the impact and the consequence will be of this behavior, and I'm not willing to pay that consequence. So I'm going to take a nice deep breath and instead. Now that's a sophisticated practice that I've worked for decades in order to actualize, and my baby children, they're not able to. But it's being able to respond with, hey, I'm here and I'll help you with this impulse. And then let's keep practicing becoming aware of this impulse, understanding why it happens, and being able to contain it. We're shifting from suppression to containment.
So I'm guessing we get to learn to do that ourselves first.
Oh my goodness. Wouldn't that be great if we didn't have to? And the answer is yes.
Yes. You used a couple of my favorite coaching tools in this session. So the first is using the feeling in the body for discernment. So does something feel heavy or does something feel light? And I've heard other coaches use that in a way like, if it's heavy, it's not for you, or you're not supposed to take on that belief, or it's not good for you. But that is not how life works, right? We have responsibilities. We have things that, just are. It is. Yeah. And so it can become almost like a bypassing, right? Like a way of say, well, that feels heavy, so I'm not going to do that. A, not all of us have the option. B, sometimes that would cause us to be irresponsible.
Sure.
And so I loved your take on it, because it was like, yeah, being responsible for meeting our children's needs can feel heavy.
Oh, yes, it can.
And that doesn't mean we're not going to do it.
Okay. Can I expand on this?
Yes, please.
Okay. There's a practice of being able to differentiate want versus willingness. This is why I want to raise strong-willed children. My will carry me when I don't want to. We may not want to meet our children's needs. We may believe that these needs are ridiculous and inconvenient and too much for me. And we may be raging against the machine. And why do you need this? And why can't you just be easier? And why is it me who's always having to facilitate this? Why can't you do it? We're going to have our adult tantrum.
My head, Rebecca.
Yeah, well, we have the same brain maybe because we don't want to. And we get to have tantrums too. We've just learned how to not put them onto the outside. There are many parents who those things come out of their mouth. You're still having tantrums, wondering why your children are having tantrums. And I love you. And there's no judgment. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just if we haven't been contained in our tantrums and loved through them, we stay in a perpetual toddler state, which is really unfortunate for us. It makes parenting really challenging. So we can have our, I don't want to, this feels really heavy. Not wanting to do something is really heavy. I have no intrinsic motivation. I don't want to do it. However, there's maturity on my side here that's able to say, Rebecca, I know you don't want to do it. And this is your responsibility. I'm going to help you. Now, that's the internalized voice of power with discipline. I understand you don't want to do it, and it's going to happen because it's the right thing to do. I'm right here to help you. Saying no isn't an option. Not showing up isn't an option. Not following through on your commitment isn't an option. I'm right here with you to help you through this. Okay. And then I'm able to cross the threshold and show up and do my job, even if I don't feel like it. I don't want to do it.
I love what you just modeled in terms of being in power with while, having the frame that we're going to raise strong-willed children who do the right thing, even when no one's watching, even when they don't feel like it. And you use some language there, and just to end the session, I wonder if you might give us that one more time and what that sounds like, right? Like in that moment when, big brother is hitting baby brother, and it's, you talked about wait, hold on, I don't want to be done yet. I want to talk about two and done, and then maybe you can model some language for us to finish.
Okay, sure.
Because I could hear people saying that or listening to that and then saying to themselves, but then what?
Okay.
Like what does 2 and done or 5 and done mean, and then what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the answer is, I don't know. Then what? However, that's not the end of my sentence. I don't know, and I can't wait to figure that out with you. It's a great question. Let's figure that out together. So if we have a commitment to only repeat ourselves 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, because we know our threshold of annoyance and irritation ends at 3. Take care of it. So after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, we shift techniques. If my child isn't stopping when I say, hey, gentle hands. Hey, no hitting. Kiva, listen, I would not tell my child from across the room not to be hitting their baby brother. Number 1, I wouldn't even do that. I would go right over, take the hands away and say, no, hands off of baby. So, right, we need to kind of back it up a little bit. And when are we using directive instruction, hoping for success? And when is that pure insanity? Then it might be more than we realize. So if it's a non-safety issue and I'm just asking, babe, honey, will you set the table? Honey, please put your book down and I need help setting the table. Please put the plates onto the table. And she's not doing it. there's 5 to 10 reasons why not. I could sit there and analyze the why not, but I'm not trying to do that every single second of my life. I'm trying to get food on the table and for us to eat dinner. So I may just set that down. Okay, she's not listening. She's not listening. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm a terrible parent. She's a terrible kid. I need to take this away. No, I'm not opening the door to disaster. I'm just accepting she's not following through on this technique. Ugh, that sucks. I wish she was. However, she's not. So accept reality. Go over to the table. Hello? Honey, do you hear me? I'm asking you to please set the table. Do you need some help? I love you. That's what I would do because that's my relationship with my daughter. And she'd say, fine. Say, okay, I love you, baby girl. You're so cute. You may not say that to your child. Your technique may be very, very different. And I don't know. So we would figure it out. It's just 2 and done, shift technique.
Yeah. Okay. So last thing, I would love you. You're such a powerful language modeler and communicator. And so we talked about kind of redirecting ourselves when we're in that heavy and, we're going to do the right thing because we've got the adult wisdom aspect of ourselves and our children don't. So how do we meet a child, maybe it's just an extension of what you were just sharing, in a power with framework without resorting to, yelling and screaming and threatening and all the things, while still guiding and directing behavior in a different way when, I don't know, does it ever get to the point where like play is not the right answer anymore or we've tried a million things? I don't know. I'm kind of trying to put it together.
Sure, the answer can be yes to that question.
Yeah.
When developmentally our children are communicating to us that they're needing more complex, sophisticated guidance. That's not just, let's play through this. They're needing like deep conversation and dialogue and making sense of their swirling, whirling, complex, contradictory inner world. And we need to kind of, open the door for that level of insight. But what you're asking me is how can we be with ourselves in a way that supports us to show up and respond to our children in a way that supports their maturity. I want that to be very clear that everything that I aim for in personal parenting practice and with clients is we are here to support our child's maturity. We're not here to enable immaturity or coddle or create children who are stuck in developmental phases. I can't tell you, Kiva, how many times I've experienced the reinforcement of a personal theory that actually children raised in obedience culture and then become adults, and they're my students. And I say this with love, and it's about myself too. Some of the most impatient, demanding, emotionally explosive, incapable of withstanding anything other than instant gratification. It's just, the irony is hilarious to me, where the commentary is we're raising spoiled, ungrateful, immature, coddled kids who are entitled. And I tell this to my students all the time as parents. We have tantrums when we don't get what we want, and we call it discipline. So how do we be with ourselves and show up for our children in a way that matures their brain and body and their skill sets? How do we grow children into vital, vibrant, healthy adults who follow their will and their dreams and their heart and their responsibility to be citizen on planet Earth? And I like to personify the prefrontal cortex or the executive functioning. So impulse control and self-monitoring are 2 aspects of executive functioning. It's the voice inside. We all have a voice inside, and some of your voice inside is wired more toward the fear part of your brain. If you weren't met with genuine curiosity of, I'm wanting to understand why that happened, because I know you and I know that you're a kid who makes the right choice. So what happened here? Do you have an idea? Can I make some guesses? You obviously wouldn't do it that fast. You would give them time to talk. But that's how self-monitoring is developed, because we're met with, Gabor Mate calls it compassionate inquiry. Mm-hmm. Most of us are developing compassionate inquiry and self-monitoring for the first time as adults. That is actually helpful. Like, Rebecca, why did you do that? What was going on for you? How could you have handled that differently? What do you need to do to clean this up? What action step, what conversation needs to happen? Okay, we're going to do that. I don't want to do it. I know you don't. And I'm going to help you. And genuinely, Kiva, that is the voice inside of my mind.
Yeah, I was laughing because I have that exact conversation with myself on the daily. It's quite helpful.
Oh.
So good. Yeah, I am. Your share reminded me of this recent story. As you know, we're just coming out of the college admissions process with Charlotte, and my, she had some disappointments and some surprises, and it was all over the map. And she was fine through the whole thing. She was just, like, oh, well, I guess that wasn't where I was meant to go. And I know whatever's waiting for me is going to be great. And my mama, bless her, could not get her brain around this. She's like, she's keeping it in. She started so upset. You should check on her. Like, Mama, no, she's actually fine. Like, she really is actually great.
Wow. And for you to be able to facilitate, because that voice could have been coming from within, right? Rather than your mom. The voice of, I don't believe her. I don't trust my child. Mm-hmm. But you were able to advocate and believe.
Yeah.
That's security, by the way. Keep it good. You get a star on your sticker chart.
I'm going to go get my gold star t-shirt and wear it.
Yeah.